Hello, I'm Murtada Elfadl, programmer at NewFest. Thank you so much for tuning in to this post-screening conversation with the team from the film Wildhood. It is my pleasure and honor to welcome to this conversation the cast members, Joshua Odjick and Phillip Lewitski. Hello, Joshua. Hi, Phillip.
Hey.
For
So
having
nice. It's so great to have you for this conversation after watching the film. Um, so we just watched this wonderful film. It just ended, and I wanted to start with asking you about that final scene, that dance that ended the scene at the movie. It leaves the audience. It left us on this such a high note after being with you for almost 2 hours and watching the story. So can you talk about that dance and that ending? Let's start there. If you can tell me about that, what you remember when you were shooting it.
Would you like to go first, Philip?
well, you were the one dancing and teaching me, so fine.
All right. Yeah, like I feel like there was a different ending for the film, but I feel like Breton had this vision of us doing a dance, and that was like kind of the character's way of expressing um, healing in a way, healing of dance. And also there was a part that was cut from the film was when we all put clay and mud onto Philip, oh, Link at the time.
Yeah.
And there was like a way, a sense of also from healing and also taking away from that trauma from Philip's character. So basically, that dance was, in a sense, of healing and acceptance, and how everyone just joined in at the end. And it was very, very beautiful, well done. And it was basically all of us basically coming into the family, and how it changes from when we were dancing in the field, and how Travis came in and just felt like it was a family at that point.
Yeah.
And it was very beautiful, very lovely, and it was very cold, very cold. I remember.
Yeah, it is lovely, like you said. Philip, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think it was just along the lines of what Josh was saying. It was not only a healing journey for the characters in the story, but also I felt like it was a healing journey for all of us. And it just happened to be that that was one of the last scenes we shot. And so it was a very cleansing experience. And it didn't make it into the film, but I fall backwards into the water. And, I don't regret doing that because it was freezing, because it actually felt like the water was washing away this entire brutal journey that we had all gone on. And yeah, it was an amazing day, and I'll never forget it.
Yeah, it's such a wonderful note to end the movie on. But I want to go back and talk a little bit about the relationship between your characters. Like this movie, we see this relationship built throughout the movie. So can both of you talk about sort of finding that relationship and building it, whether together or apart? How did you do it? How did you find that relationship between your characters?
I feel like it started early on, right, Philip? Like
Yeah,
during the well, we basically started reaching out to each other once we got into Halifax, and we did like 2 week quarantine, because that was at the height of the COVID pandemic, and we were the first productions to be filming during that time. And so we basically had to cut down to rehearsals to Zoom calls, and
Mm,
basically almost for basically 14 to 16 days we'd stay up 12 hours a day, 10 to 12 hours a day, just rehearsing the lines and just becoming transparent with each other, basically.
yeah.
And Philip can talk about when we met in person.
Tell us about that, Philip.
Well, it was a very odd experience. I've never done rehearsals over Zoom for weeks on end, and we went so deep with each other. And so by the time we actually met in person, and to actually feel a body behind the computer screen, was interesting and a surprise, and it was amazing. And our acting coach Claudia Ure was there as well, and the three of us were really working very closely with each other to build this. And but it was very powerful how deep we were able to go remotely. And then once we were actually physically with each other, it just made it that much easier and that much smoother of a transition to just go out and do it, and just felt really comfortable with each other. And that was the most important thing.
Yeah, and it shows in the film. You can see it, and that's kind of why the audience gets into the movie. So we talked about sort of finding that emotional intensity, but also you have some really intense physical scenes. Like I'm thinking of the car chase, which for me was an intense scene of like, and I was watching, I was like in with the characters and what's happening to them, what's going to go on. And so I wanted to ask you, how was filming that? Because that's completely different than sort of finding the relationship.
The car chase with Arvin, like when I threw the piss bottle at the car.
Yeah.
Oh, that was actually probably one of the funnest scenes to shoot, because for some reason that day, and I don't really consider myself a very athletic or like hand-eye coordinated person, but for some reason I literally was able to hit that windshield on every take.
Oh wow.
I just felt very happy with myself for that. So it was a nice surprise, out of the ordinary. But it was just fun, like the three of us just jamming out in the car, and then it turning into this very intense thing, and then yeah, and then back to this like joyous, victorious thing that we got away from, and yeah, it was just really fun day. And
yeah, I mean, I don't think it's really intense, and it shows that you guys sort of managed. I'm happy you said that you found the fun behind that scene, because to me it was very, very intense, but it works.
Yeah, I would say we had to find the fun behind every scene, or else we would have just been in a deep depression by the end of it. We have to find humor in even the most horrendous things, and it was really great chemistry between me and Josh and Avery, because we were able to find that. And every time me and Josh were too serious or we're in this dark place, Avery would just come along with a stupid jab or a joke and bring us out of it. So it was really just like such an amazing cast to be around. And yeah,
chemistry was great.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the chemistry between the three of you really shows. I wanted also to ask you, Phillip, Link is, starts off very closed emotionally in his interactions with everybody at the beginning of the movie, and gradually we see him sort of opening up, thawing a little bit. So can you talk about working on that transformation for your character?
I guess I just sort of trusted that the journey would just happen in the moment. And we actually shot it, because movies aren't shot in chronological order, but for some reason this one sort of felt like its own series of like the bits and pieces that we were shooting kind of felt like they were building on top of each other. And so that really helped, because I was actually able to like live this journey that Link was going on, rather than trying to guess what he was feeling or what that would be like. I was just experiencing it as it was happening. And obviously there was a lot of work, like Josh was saying, that we put into developing these characters and understanding them. But it was really just through Brett and Hannon, our director and writer, their guidance that really helped us get there in the moment, because there's only so much preparation that you can do. But when you're actually there on the day, in that moment with that person experiencing that thing, it's really important to have that kind of support around you, or else you can get lost in it. Or
it shows in your performance. It's really wonderful. And Joshua, I wanted to ask you, so your character is more of the rock, the mentor, somebody who sort of to me at least, was comfortable with where they are in their life, especially when compared to Link. And sometimes I think it's not that easy to show emotion for somebody who's like that, who's comfortable, who's like a rock. So can you tell us about how you came up with the character and how you built it?
Well, I feel like I did really relate to the character in that aspect. I'm really a quiet, introspective guy, and so I was basically playing that part of myself as the character, and yeah, I was just doing that. um, Most of the time, it was also like a lot of the rehearsals, just dropping into the character, and some days it wasn't perfect. Sometimes I would not be there. Um,
Hmm.
with the character, like I wasn't dropped in, and that's why, like as we said, going back to that chemistry, it was always very apparent that we had to be transparent with each other, me and Philip, and say like if there was off days on set, like hey, what was wrong? Are you all good? Like what's up? Just checking in with each other. So that's what we basically did, and also before for Wildhood, when I got the first callback in person in Toronto, I started working on bits and pieces of characters from different plays and different scenes in the classes that I was attending, and a lot of that I just took from for Buzzamai. So basically, I worked on Buzzamai like for a year until I realized I got cast as the role as Buzzamai, and
Hmm.
sure enough, I had to utilize those tools, and thankfully enough, I had a very very great acting coach. She was very there from the start, and so I really give my credit to where it's due. And yeah, so basically, it was also part of that.
Yeah, it really, your preparation shows in your performance. So this film is a road trip, and I wanted to ask you about that. I have a couple of questions about the road trip. So first, just as somebody who's into movies, did you watch any classic road trip movies to prepare for this, or if you haven't, talk about your work with the director to sort of get that rhythm of the road trip.
Well, I've never seen a road trip movie like this before, so it's kind of hard to find a reference,
Mm.
which was kind of scary actually. But I
What was
think,
what was scary?
well, just knowing that something like this has never really been done before, and
Hmm.
it's such a personal story to Brett, and for them to put it out there and to be so vulnerable in the writing and the delivery of it, to tell such a personal story, I admire that, and I wanted to make sure that I did everything that I could to make Brett proud and to do the story justice. And so I don't think watching any other movie could have helped me, and so
Hmm.
I didn't, because it's Brett's story. There's nothing that could ever compare to it. And I did watch the short film that Brett did, Wildfire.
Hmm.
I was hesitant to watch it, but I did, and I really enjoyed it. And I guess I used pieces of that in the work, but no.
So can you, since you mentioned Brett, the director, can you talk more about your collaboration with them on set, both of you, Joshua and Philip, and how sort of you were talking about trying to honor their story. So can you talk a little bit about how they prepared you on set, or that relationship on set while shooting with the director?
It's such an interesting style of work where Brett didn't use a lot of words to direct. It was more just like a look or just a feeling or energy, or I don't even know what it really was, but all I know is that it made my job a lot easier working with Brett, and it was just such a unique experience that I've never felt before, and it's very grateful. So
Mhm.
the dream to work with Brett, really.
Yeah, yeah. Breton was very, very, very nice on set. Like, definitely, we were very fortunate to have like the script as a reference, but we were also able to, you know, artistically improv in a sense. and that's kind of like what part of the magic was there, and having these impulses, and we would just do these impulses. And yeah, like especially for the cake scene, I don't think that was written into the script where I wiped the cake off of your nose. I think that was just an impulse my character felt, and I was like, I just did it.
Yeah.
And Brett was like, yeah, that's perfect, I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The movie looks gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's, it's mostly all set outside. So if you can both talk about sort of shooting outside in nature, how did that sort of affect your performance? Where did you shoot? How did that all happen and take place?
So we like started like in the middle of the summer, like in July, like right there, and we kind of finished around August. So around August, that's when the seasons change in Eastern Canada. So that was kind of like getting into fall time. So by the time we did the waterfall scene, that was when the season got, it changed and it got really
Oh.
cold. And but yeah, like throughout the season, like we were having a lot of days like where sometimes it would be raining and forecast, and there would be bugs on set, but that really didn't matter because
Mhm.
all that mattered was just telling the story, and that's what we basically did. So I really liked that difference of shooting in nature opposed to being on like in a studio or a set.
Yeah.
So I really like that. It was very calming for me from my experience. Like I grew up in a reservation, and so I was basically outside most of my life, and so it felt like it was kind of home to me, being outside with nature.
What about you, Phil?
I heard that in the editing process, it was really important for Brett to see the land changing with the characters. And so as they're going through their own journeys, the land is affecting them. And that's why it's changing so much. And that's why I think it's so brilliant that it was like a road trip type movie where it's always changing. The location is always changing, and we're affected by those changes of environment as people are naturally. And so yeah, it was, and it really did affect us too. Like there were some locations that were just beautiful beyond belief, and other locations that were really run down, like the trailer park, and that affects you.
Yeah, it
Without,
does.
yeah, without even knowing it really.
And it sort of this leads me to my next question is, what do you hope people who watch the movie take away from it, from this? It's such a wonderful, beautiful, but very understated story. And it ends on such a hopeful note. But what do you hope the audience takes away from it?
I hope that what the audience takes away from this is that I said this before in different interviews, is that no one should be ashamed of who they are and where they come from and what creed or how they express themselves, and that's just how you are, and if that's the way you are, you should just live it and love it. Like it's very apparent that people that go through that, especially from my journey across Canada, I've met a lot of two-spirit individuals, or not even two-spirit individuals. A lot of First Nations youth didn't have the self-esteem to see themselves represented on screen, and that's what I really hope, and what people would take from the film. And throughout the time after this has been out, I've gotten people coming up to me and kind of saying to me with tears in their eyes and hugging me, and seeing this film was really healing for me to see kind of my life portrayed on screen. So it brought me like joy to myself, and it just felt like it was also healing and for me in a sense, and I just really love that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think a lot of people will see this movie and will get to that point that you were just describing. Philip, would you like to add anything to this?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Everything Josh said, and um, I guess along the same lines, just in its simplest form, don't judge. Don't judge people. Period. It's that simple. And love one another. And I think that's what's so brilliant about Brett's writing is so simple, but people overcomplicate it all the time, and it, yeah.
So you have the wonderful Michael Greyeyes in this film. So I wanted, we have to be a little starstruck, and I wanted to ask you about working with Michael Greyeyes. What can you tell us about that?
Such a cool character.
I feel like when we did the Zoom rehearsal, like we did the whole read through, I saw Michael's name and I was like, oh, okay, be cool, professional. I kind of had to like, carry that same face on set, but I was like kind of like giddy inside. I was like, okay, drop it. Not good for your character, or just do that. Just he's a regular person. Oh my god! Well, yeah, I loved Michael on set. It was very nice working with him.
Yeah, he was nothing like, you would have thought of him. Like, just such a grounded, down to earth, just really cool person, and it matched his character so well in the movie. It was so brilliant, and like just his wardrobe and everything, just he really just made me and Josh, I mean, we've talked about this, but he made us just feel like very comfortable and not intimidated, and just like fellow artists, I guess.
Yeah, I bet. So you are both sort of like starting your careers as actors, and this is such a wonderful movie to be in. Can you tell me a little bit about sort of? I feel like with the story, it hit me like I felt such a personal connection to it. But I want to ask you, as people who were involved deep in this story, what as actors, what was your personal connection to this wonderful story of Breton?
Would you like me to go first, or Phillip?
Sure.
Whoever wants to go first. Why don't we start with you, Joshua?
Oh, well, definitely like from my community where I grew up in, I've seen a lot of two-spirit individuals. So I basically took a lot of like their personality a bit, and how their experiences, and how I've heard how they've been treated, and as well as my family members. I've basically wanted to bring that sense of belonging to the character, I suppose, like belonging in where it doesn't have to feel threatened about what anyone else thinks. And yeah, so that's kind of one of the reasons why I felt connected with the character, and as well as Buzzamai, he's like a lone wolf. I kind of like being by myself, having my own thoughts, but I just like being by myself.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why I connect with the character.
Yeah.
And another reason was at the time when I did that monologue, which was true to me at that time, but after some course of events, I've met my family members, like my sisters, my brothers, and nieces and nephews, and I thought that was kind of healing in a sense, and kind of a weird coincidence of how this would be happening in my life during this time. And so yeah, that's one of the reasons why I feel like it was connected personally for me.
Yeah. What about you, Phillip?
It's more of a family thing, really. I just felt like this was a really important story to share with my family, and they're the most important people in my life. So really, everything I do is for them, and I just felt super connected to everything Brett was putting on paper as soon as I read it, and I just felt like people in my family would be affected in a really positive way by seeing it, and they were. So I couldn't be happier.
Yeah. Well, as a member of the audience, and I'm sure our audience who are watching this, I really felt that connection, and this movie really it's very touching. It's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing these stories with us and for your time today. And I wish you all the success with Wildhood and in your future endeavors. And for our audience, thank you so much for tuning in to this conversation post the wonderful movie Wildhood. And until we see you at another New Fest screening, we say goodbye.